99% of women secretly wish men would do this. And it's not flowers. It's not grand gestures. It's not even romance. It's listening, really listening, without trying to fix, without checking a phone, without waiting for their turn to talk. Because here's the truth. People don't fall for people who talk the most. They fall for people who make them feel heard. And in a world addicted to noise, silence, real, attentive silence, has become the rarest form of love. Today, I want to talk about why that matters more than anything else you'll ever say. Let me tell you something most men get backwards, and it's costing them more than they realize. When a man wants to be a better partner, his instinct is to focus on what he should do. Buy her flowers, plan a nice dinner, say the right thing at the right time, remember the anniversary, compliment the outfit. These are the what. And there's nothing wrong with any of them. Flowers are lovely. Dinners are lovely, but here's the problem. If the what isn't backed by a why, she can feel it. Every time. Women are remarkably perceptive at sensing when something is performed versus when something is genuine, and no amount of technique can fake genuine. This is the same mistake companies make when they try to build a brand. They study what successful companies do, and they copy it. They see Apple's clean design, and they redesign their product. They see a competitor's marketing campaign, and they replicate the formula. And it never works. Not really, because they've copied the what without understanding the why that made it authentic in the first place. People don't fall in love with what you do. They fall in love with why you do it. That's true in business, and it is absolutely true in love. So ask yourself, honestly, why do you want to show up for her? Is it because you want something in return? Is it because you read somewhere that this is what women want, so you're performing a checklist? Or is it because you genuinely, deeply care about her well-being, her joy, her peace of mind? And the actions are simply an expression of that caring, not a substitute for it. Here's the thing about why. It cannot be faked for long. You can fake a bouquet of flowers. You cannot fake showing up at 2 a.m. because she's scared and needs someone there. You can fake a compliment. You cannot fake actually listening to what she says her dreams are, and then remembering them 6 months later and asking about them unprompted. The what is easy to manufacture. The why is not. And that's exactly why the why matters so much, because it's the one thing that can't be counterfeited. Think about the difference between a man who brings his partner coffee in the morning because he read that small gestures matter in relationships versus a man who brings her coffee because he woke up thinking about her and wanted her morning to be a little easier. From the outside, these look identical. Same coffee, same gesture, same timing maybe. But she will feel the difference because human beings, and women especially, who are often more attuned to emotional undercurrents, can sense the frequency behind an action. One is transactional, the other is relational. One says, I am doing this to get a result. The other says, I am doing this because of who you are to me. This is why so many men feel confused and frustrated. They say, I did everything right. I did what the book said. I did what worked for my friend. Why isn't it working? And the answer is almost always the same. You were operating from what, not why. You were following a formula instead of following your heart. And formulas run out. They run out because eventually she notices the pattern, notices that the gestures feel scripted, notices that when the formula stops producing the result you wanted, the gestures stop too. But when you start with why, when the actions come from a genuine place of wanting her to feel safe, valued, and loved, not because you're trying to earn something, but because that is simply who you choose to be with her, the actions themselves change. You don't need a manual anymore. You don't need to memorize the right things to say because the right things start to come naturally. You listen because you actually want to know her. You remember the small details because you were actually paying attention, not because you wrote it down to recall later. You show up on the hard days not because a book told you loyalty matters, but because walking away never even crosses your mind. This is the foundation everything else is built on. Every other point I'm going to share with you today, trust, listening, playing the long game, vulnerability, showing up, none of it works if it's not rooted in a genuine why. You can perform all 6 of these behaviors perfectly and still leave her feeling empty because she will always be able to tell the difference between a man who is doing things for her and a man who is doing things because of her. So before you ask, what should I do differently? Ask the harder question first. Why do I want to be different for her? Get that answer right, and I promise you, The what will take care of itself. Let me ask you something. When you think about the moment trust breaks in a relationship, what comes to mind? For most people, it's the big betrayal, the lie that gets discovered, the affair, the broken promise that changes everything. And yes, those moments matter. But here's what almost nobody talks about. Trust was never actually built or broken in that one dramatic moment. It was built slowly in 1,000 small moments that came before it. Moments so quiet, so seemingly insignificant that neither person even realized they were happening. This is one of the most important lessons from studying how great leaders build loyal, high-performing teams. The leaders who inspire deep trust are almost never the ones who deliver one grand, sweeping gesture. They're the ones who show up consistently in the small, unnoticed moments. Remembering a team member's difficult week, following through on a minor commitment nobody would have noticed if they'd forgotten, asking a genuine question instead of a performative one. Trust is not an event. Trust is an accumulation. And the exact same principle governs whether a woman feels safe enough to fully open her heart to a man. Think about what actually happens in the early stages of any relationship. She's not evaluating you based on the vacation you planned or the ring you might buy someday. She's watching the small things. Did he text back when he said he would? Did he remember that she doesn't like cilantro? Did he notice she seemed a little off today, even though she said she was fine? Did he follow through on the tiny plan he mentioned last week, the one so small he probably forgot he even said it? These moments feel insignificant to most men. To her, they are the entire relationship. They are the evidence she is quietly, constantly gathering to answer one question: can I trust this person with my heart? Here's why this matters so much biologically and psychologically. Human beings are not wired to trust based on words. We are wired to trust based on patterns. A promise is just words until it's been tested and proven true, again and again, in situations too small to fake. Anyone can say, "I'll always be there for you." That's easy. What's hard, what actually builds trust, is being there for the small, unglamorous moments. Answering the phone when she calls upset about something that seems trivial. Showing up on time, every time, not just for the big occasions, but for the ordinary Tuesday dinner. These moments don't feel like tests, but they are exactly that. And every time you pass one, you are making a deposit into a reservoir of safety that she is building inside herself. This is also why grand gestures alone can never repair what small betrayals destroy. A man can plan the most romantic proposal in the world, but if he has spent years being unreliable in the small things, canceling plans last minute, being inconsistent with his attention, saying one thing and doing another, the grand gesture won't matter. It can't. Because trust isn't rebuilt through spectacle. It's rebuilt the exact same way it was built in the first place. Brick by brick, in the mundane, unremarkable moments where nobody is watching and nothing dramatic is at stake. This is genuinely difficult for a lot of men to accept, because our culture teaches us that impact comes from big moments. We celebrate the proposal, the surprise trip, the elaborate gift. But ask any woman what actually makes her feel safe in a relationship, and she will rarely mention the grand gestures. She will talk about the fact that he calls when he says he will, that he remembers the small things she mentioned once in passing, that when things get hard, he doesn't disappear. He shows up again in the same small, quiet way he always has. There's something else worth understanding here. Consistency in small moments does something a grand gesture never can. It removes uncertainty. A big romantic gesture is exciting, but excitement and security are not the same emotion. In fact, too much unpredictability, even the exciting kind, can actually undermine a woman's sense of safety, because part of her brain is always asking, can I count on this? Small, repeated reliability answers that question every single day. It tells her nervous system, quietly and consistently, you are safe here. You do not need to brace for disappointment. This person's word means something. So if you want to build real trust, not the fragile kind that collapses under pressure, but the deep kind that can weather real hardship, stop looking for the one big moment that will prove your love. It doesn't exist. Instead, look at tomorrow. Look at the small, forgettable Tuesday. Do what you said you would do. Notice what she needs before she has to ask. Follow through on the tiny promise you could easily let slide, because trust was never about the fireworks. It was always about the follow-through. There's a moment that happens in almost every conversation between a man and a woman, and it's so small, most men don't even notice it's happening. She starts to share something, a frustration from her day, a worry about the future, something that's been sitting heavy on her mind, and before she's even finished her second sentence, he's already formulating a solution. He's not trying to be dismissive. In his mind, he's being helpful. That's what men are trained to do. Identify the problem, fix the problem, move on. But in that exact moment, something quietly breaks. She doesn't feel helped. She feels unheard. And there is a profound difference between the two. This is one of the most misunderstood truths about connection. And it applies just as powerfully in relationships as it does in leadership. The best leaders in the world are not the ones who talk the most or who have the fastest answers. They are the ones who create an environment where people feel safe enough to speak honestly, because they know they will be heard before they are judged or corrected. That safety doesn't come from having the right answers. It comes from something much rarer. The discipline to listen without immediately trying to control the outcome. Listening, real listening, is one of the hardest things a person can do, precisely because it requires setting aside your own instinct to respond. Most of us don't actually listen when someone is talking to us. We wait. We wait for our turn to speak, and while we wait, we're not absorbing what's being said. We're preparing our rebuttal, our advice, our next point. This is especially true for men in conversations with the women in their lives, because there is a deeply ingrained instinct to move immediately into problem-solving mode. She says she's overwhelmed at work, and within seconds he's offering a 3-step plan to fix it. She didn't ask for a plan. She asked, without necessarily using these words, to be understood. Here's what's counterintuitive about this. Choosing not to fix something can actually be a greater act of care than fixing it. When you resist the urge to jump in with solutions and instead simply listen, really listen, with your full attention, without your phone in your hand, without your mind already 3 steps ahead, you are communicating something far more powerful than any advice ever could. You are communicating, your feelings matter to me more than my need to resolve them quickly. You are communicating, I trust that you are capable of handling this, and I am here simply to walk through it with you. That is not passivity. That is one of the most active, most difficult forms of respect a person can offer another. Think about the last time you felt truly listened to, not just heard, but listened to, in a way where the other person wasn't checking their phone, wasn't glancing at the door, wasn't already halfway to their response before you finished your sentence. It's rare, isn't it? And that rarity is exactly why it means so much when it happens. In a world where everyone is talking, where everyone has an opinion, where attention is the most fragmented resource we have, the person who can offer undivided, unhurried presence becomes almost irreplaceable. That is not a small thing. That is leadership, applied to love. There's also a deeper layer here worth understanding. When a woman feels she has to fight to be heard, or when she anticipates that sharing something vulnerable will immediately be met with unsolicited advice or dismissal, she starts to share less. Not because she stops feeling things, but because she learns, slowly and painfully, that opening up doesn't lead to connection. It leads to a conversation that centers around being fixed rather than being understood. And once that pattern sets in, something important begins to close off. The relationship becomes shallower, not because the love disappeared, but because the safety to be fully known did. This is why listening has to be practiced as intentionally as any other skill. It means putting the phone down completely, not just turning it face down. It means resisting the urge to interrupt with, well, have you tried? And instead asking, what do you need right now? Just to talk, or would it help to think through solutions together? That single question changes everything, because it hands the control back to her. It says, I am not here to perform helpfulness. I am here to actually help in the way that serves you, not the way that satisfies my own discomfort with watching you struggle. Because here's the truth most men never realize. Sitting with someone in their difficulty without rushing to resolve it requires far more strength than jumping straight to a fix. It means tolerating your own urge to act. It means being comfortable with not having the answer. And ironically, that discomfort, that willingness to simply be present without controlling the outcome, is often exactly what she needed all along. There's a concept that changes the way you understand every long-term relationship once you truly grasp it, and it comes from a simple but profound distinction. Some things in life are finite games, and some things are infinite games. A finite game has known players, fixed rules, and a clear endpoint. Think of a basketball game or a chess match. There's a winner, there's a loser, and then it's over. An infinite game has no fixed endpoint. The players can change, the rules can shift, and the entire point isn't to win, it's to keep playing. And here is the mistake so many men make without even realizing it. They treat their relationship like a finite game, when it was always meant to be an infinite one. You can see this mistake show up everywhere in how couples argue. He needs to be right. She needs to be right. Someone has to win the argument, prove their point, come out on top. And in the moment, it feels satisfying. There's a rush that comes with winning, with proving you were correct, with getting the last word. But step back and ask yourself, what did you actually win? Because if you won the argument, and in doing so, made her feel smaller, unheard, or alone, you didn't win anything. You just made the infinite game harder to keep playing. You may have taken the finite round, but you weakened the very thing that was supposed to last a lifetime. This is one of the most important shifts a man can make in how he approaches love. Stop trying to win the relationship and start trying to sustain it. That single shift changes almost everything about how you communicate, how you handle conflict, and how you show up on the hard days. When you're playing a finite game, every disagreement becomes a battle to be won. When you're playing an infinite game, every disagreement becomes a problem to be solved together because you both understand you're on the same team, working toward the same outcome. Staying in the game together for as long as possible, think about what this actually looks like in practice. In a finite mindset, when she brings up something that hurt her, the instinct is to defend, to explain, to prove that her perception is wrong or exaggerated, because admitting fault feels like losing. But in an infinite mindset, admitting fault isn't a loss at all. It's an investment. It's you saying, I care more about us continuing to grow together than I care about protecting my ego in this one moment. That single reframe, from ego protection to relationship investment, is often the difference between couples who grow closer through conflict and couples who slowly, quietly drift apart from it. The infinite game also changes how you think about sacrifice. In a finite game, sacrifice feels like a loss. If I give something up, I have less. But in an infinite game, sacrifice is simply the cost of staying in the game long term. You compromise on where to spend the holidays not because you lose that argument, but because the relationship itself is worth more than being right about geography. You apologize first, even when you believe you're only half at fault, not because you're weak, but because you understand that being infinitely committed matters more than finitely correct. Here's something else worth understanding. Couples who play the infinite game don't measure success by the absence of conflict. They measure it by their ability to keep showing up for each other despite conflict. This is a crucial distinction because so many men believe a good relationship is one without arguments, without friction, without hard seasons. But that's not realistic, and chasing that illusion sets couples up for disappointment the moment real life. Stress, exhaustion, misunderstanding inevitably shows up. The goal was never to avoid the hard seasons. The goal is to keep playing through them together without keeping score of who's winning and who's losing. This mindset also protects a relationship from one of its most corrosive habits, keeping a mental ledger. When you're playing a finite game, you start tracking who did more, who gave more, who's ahead in the relationship. That kind of scorekeeping poisons intimacy because love was never meant to be transactional. The infinite mindset removes the ledger entirely. It's not about who did the dishes last or who apologized more times this month. It's about whether, together, you're still building something that can last well beyond this particular disagreement, this particular hard week, this particular version of who you both are right now. So the next time you feel the pull to win, to prove your point, to come out ahead, to be the one who was right, pause and ask yourself the more important question. Am I trying to win this moment? Or am I trying to keep this relationship alive for the long run? Because those two goals often pull in opposite directions. And the men who understand this, who let go of the need to win the small battles, are almost always the ones who end up winning the only thing that actually matters, a love that lasts. There's a moment that terrifies most men more than almost anything else in a relationship, and it has nothing to do with commitment or confrontation. It's the moment they have to say 3 words that feel far more dangerous than I love you. Those words are, I was wrong, or it's close cousins, I don't know, I need help, I'm scared. From a young age, so many men are taught, directly or indirectly, that strength means certainty, that a real man has the answers, doesn't show weakness, and never admits fault unless absolutely cornered. And this belief, more than almost any other, quietly sabotages relationships from the inside. Here's the truth that great leaders eventually learn, often the hard way. The willingness to say, "I don't know," is not a weakness. It's one of the rarest and most powerful forms of strength there is. The leaders people trust most, the ones who inspire real loyalty, are not the ones who project constant confidence and certainty. They're the ones willing to stand in front of their team and say, "I got that wrong. Here's what I'm going to do differently." That kind of honesty doesn't diminish respect. It builds it, because it proves the leader values truth over ego. And the exact same principle governs whether a woman feels she can trust a man completely, not just with her heart, but with the reality of who he actually is, flaws included. Think about what happens when a man refuses to be vulnerable. He can't admit when he's struggling, so he withdraws instead, and she's left wondering what's wrong, feeling shut out of his inner world. He can't admit when he's wrong, so every disagreement turns into a defensive standoff instead of a resolution. He can't admit when he's scared or overwhelmed, so he either shuts down emotionally or masks it with irritability, and she absorbs the tension without ever understanding its source. In every one of these situations, the armor he's wearing to appear strong is actually the exact thing creating distance between them. What looks like strength from the outside is often, quietly, corroding the relationship from within. Now think about the opposite. A man who can say, "I handled that badly, and I'm sorry," without immediately following it with a defense or an excuse. A man who can say, "I'm struggling with something at work, and I don't have it figured out yet, but I wanted you to know," without feeling like that admission makes him less of a man in her eyes. A man who can say, "I need you right now," without treating that need as some kind of failure. These moments don't make a woman think less of him. They almost always do the opposite. They make her feel like she finally knows the real person standing in front of her. Not a performance of confidence, but an actual human being she can trust with the truth. This is because vulnerability, at its core, is an act of trust. When you allow yourself to be seen without the armor, without the certainty, without the polished exterior, you are essentially saying, "I trust you enough to show you who I really am, including the parts I'm not proud of." And that kind of trust is contagious. It gives her permission to do the same. Relationships built on two people constantly performing strength for each other stay surface level forever, because nobody ever feels safe enough to be fully known. But relationships where both people can be honestly, imperfectly human with each other, those are the relationships that develop real depth, real intimacy, real staying power. There's also something important to understand about why admitting fault specifically carries so much weight. Saying "I was wrong" requires a person to prioritize the relationship over their own ego, even for just a moment. It's a small sacrifice of pride in service of something larger. And every time a man makes that sacrifice, he's sending a clear message: this relationship matters more to me than being right. Over time, that message accumulates into something powerful, a deep, felt sense that he is safe to be vulnerable with, because he's already shown, repeatedly, that he values honesty over image. It's worth being honest about how hard this actually is. Vulnerability is uncomfortable, specifically because it removes control. When you admit you don't know something, you can't predict how the other person will respond. When you admit you were wrong, you're handing over the narrative instead of controlling it. That discomfort is real, and it doesn't go away just because you understand the concept intellectually. But that discomfort is exactly the price of real intimacy. There is no version of deep connection that doesn't require this kind of risk, because being fully known necessarily means being seen without the protective performance. So the next time you feel the instinct to defend, to deflect, to project certainty you don't actually feel, pause and consider the alternative. Consider what it would mean to simply say the true thing instead. Not because it's easy, but because it is, without question, one of the most powerful ways to build a bond that performance alone could never create. There's a version of love that only exists on the good days, when everything is easy, when the mood is right, when showing up costs nothing. And then there's a different kind of love entirely, one that reveals itself only in the moments nobody would blame you for stepping back. It's in that second category, in those exact inconvenient, unglamorous, exhausting moments. where the real answer to whether someone truly loves another person gets written. This idea comes from something powerful in how the strongest teams and organizations are built. There's a concept called the circle of safety. The idea that people don't feel truly protected by an organization because of what happens when times are good. They feel protected and they feel loyal in return because of what happens when times are hard. Anyone can lead a team during a season of success. The real test of leadership happens during the layoffs, the crises, the moments when leaders could easily protect themselves first. And the leaders who choose their people over their own comfort in those moments are the ones who earn something money can't buy. Trust that runs so deep it becomes loyalty for life. The exact same law governs relationships. Anyone can be a good partner when it's convenient. Anyone can show affection on a great date night, during a fun vacation, in the early honeymoon phase, when everything feels effortless. That's not where love is tested. Love is tested on the Tuesday night when you're exhausted from your own long day, and she needs to talk anyway. It's tested when you had plans, real plans you were looking forward to, and she calls upset about something that seems small to you, but isn't small to her. It's tested during the illness, the family crisis, the stretch of months where nothing feels romantic and everything just feels hard. Those are not the exceptions to the relationship. Those inconvenient moments are the relationship. Everything else is just the easy backdrop. Here's what makes this so important to understand. A woman doesn't build her sense of security around your best moments. She builds it around what you do in your worst ones, or hers. If a man is warm and attentive only when it's easy, and distant or irritated the moment it costs him something, his time, his comfort, his plans, she learns whether she says it out loud or not, that his presence has conditions. And once someone believes love has conditions, they stop fully relaxing into it. Part of them stays guarded, bracing for the moment the conditions aren't met and the warmth disappears again. But when a man shows up consistently, especially in the moments that are genuinely inconvenient for him, when he chooses her need over his own comfort again and again, not because he has to, but because that's simply who he's chosen to be, something shifts in her. She stops bracing. She stops waiting for the other shoe to drop. She starts to believe, at a level deeper than words, that this is real, that this isn't a performance that only exists under ideal conditions, that this is a person who will still be there when things are hard, not just when things are easy. This is why showing up on the hard days matters exponentially more than any single grand gesture ever could. A grand gesture proves you're capable of effort when the stakes are high and the moment is exciting. Showing up on an ordinary hard day, when nobody's watching, when there's no romantic backdrop, when the payoff isn't obvious, that proves something far more important. It proves character. It proves that your commitment isn't dependent on the conditions being favorable. And character, far more than charisma or grand romantic effort, is what people actually build their trust around over the long run. Think about what it communicates when a man consistently shows up despite inconvenience. It says, without needing a single word, you are not a priority only when it's easy for me. You are a priority, period. It says, my commitment to you does not fluctuate based on my mood, my schedule, or my own comfort. That message, repeated over months and years, becomes the bedrock of a relationship that can actually withstand real life. Because real life is not made up of endless good days. It's made up mostly of ordinary days, some of them hard, some of them inconvenient, some of them requiring sacrifice that nobody will applaud. This is also, in many ways, where everything we've talked about today comes full circle. Starting with why matters. Because it's the why that gets you out of bed to show up when it's inconvenient. Trust built in small moments matters, because those small moments are exactly what showing up looks like in practice. Listening matters, because sometimes showing up means listening on a night you'd rather be doing anything else. Playing the infinite game matters, because showing up on the hard days is precisely how you stay in that game for the long haul. And vulnerability matters, because admitting the moment is hard for you too, while still choosing to show up, is the most honest form of commitment there is. In the end, love isn't proven in the moments that cost you nothing. It's proven in the moments that cost you something and you show up anyway. That, more than anything else, is what tells a woman she has found someone worth trusting completely.